The unspoken script. Why partners keep sexual fantasies secret. Sexual fantasies, the mental movies, scripts, or images that engage the imagination and evoke arousal, are a universal component of human sexuality. Decades of research in sexology confirm that nearly all adults experience them, regardless of their gender, orientation, or relationship status. Fantasies are typically seen as a form of mental rehearsal, a safe playground for exploring desires that may never, and often should never, be enacted in reality. However, despite their normalcy, a paradox exists. Partners in loving, intimate relationships often guard their fantasies as deeply held secrets. This reluctance to share stems primarily from three powerful and interconnected psychological forces: the profound fear of judgment and shame, the confusion between fantasy and reality, and the anxiety that sharing a desire might damage the partner's self-esteem or the relationship's stability. To understand the barrier to sharing, we must first accept the nature of fantasy. Fantasies are powerful because they allow us to safely explore themes often missing from our day-to-day lives, such as novelty, power dynamics, forbidden roles, or emotional intensity. As data scientist Seth Stevens-Davidovitz noted when analyzing anonymous online search behavior, people often search for desires they would never confess to a partner, confirming that our private thoughts are far more varied and sometimes contradictory than our public lives. This internal landscape is complex. The person is not their fantasy. A fleeting thought about a dramatic scenario does not translate into a personality defect or a rejection of the current partner. But because fantasies often involve ideas that challenge cultural norms around fidelity, morality, or normal sexual behavior, the gap between the imaginative script and the partner's reality creates the potential for immense vulnerability. The most significant barrier to disclosure is the deeply rooted fear of judgment and shame. Many people carry internalized beliefs that certain sexual thoughts are dirty, shameful, or indicative of being fundamentally broken. This shame is often compounded by cultural taboos and a general lack of comprehensive sexual education that fails to normalize the breadth of human desire. When a partner considers sharing a fantasy, they are not just sharing a thought, they are offering up their most vulnerable and uncensored self. They worry that their partner's reaction, a sudden look of confusion, disgust, or disappointment, will confirm their worst fears. They fear the partner might think, "Why do you need to imagine that? Am I not enough?" The risk of incurring that judgment is often perceived as too high, making silence the preferred form of self-protection. Furthermore, the lines between fantasy and action often become dangerously blurred in a relationship. A partner may withhold a fantasy out of the fear that it will be interpreted as a literal demand or a critique of the relationship. If a fantasy involves a different person or a scenario the partner finds intimidating, the listener might feel inadequate, unattractive, or threatened. For example, sharing a fantasy about a dominant interaction might make the receiving partner feel their current, gentle approach is insufficient. The silent partner worries, "If I share this, they might think I am dissatisfied with them, and they might shut down completely." Sharing a fantasy, therefore, requires a listener to have significant emotional maturity, to hear the desire for the theme, e.g., excitement, novelty, or power, without confusing it for a rejection of the partner themselves. Without a mutual agreement that fantasies are separate from reality, it is safer to keep them private. In conclusion, sexual fantasies are a healthy, necessary function of the human mind, allowing us to explore the breadth of our erotic desires in a non-threatening space. The fact that partners rarely share them is a testament not to a lack of intimacy, but to the strong cultural taboos and deep vulnerability associated with exposing one's rawest mental scripts. The reluctance is driven by the fear of being judged, the fear of accidentally hurting the partner, and the difficulty in establishing a shared understanding that fantasy is not necessarily a blueprint for reality. For partners to move toward disclosure, they must first establish an explicit, non-judgmental framework where the act of sharing is viewed as a generous gift that enhances emotional intimacy, rather than a dangerous confession that threatens the relationship.